He said it was work. He said it couldn't wait. He said we'd reschedule. But tonight was our 15th wedding anniversary. Not 14? Not 16. 15. So I took a long bath, lit the same vanilla lavender candle he bought me from Bath and Body Works 3 years ago. The last time, he remembered. I pressed my best emerald wrap dress, the one he used to say made me look like money, and I walked into the restaurant we were supposed to celebrate at, arm in arm with his boss. He looked up from his wine glass and froze. She did too, but I didn't say a word. Not yet. My name is Dr. Monique Barnes. I'm 47 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that silence can be louder than revenge. It started the week before, a regular Wednesday in Charlotte. Classes ended early at the university, so I swung by Harris Teeter to grab flowers for the dining room. Sunflowers, bright and defiant, like small suns trying to remind me of joy. The cashier, a college kid with chipped blue nail polish, asked if I was celebrating something. I smiled. 15 years next Thursday. She whistled softly. 15. That's beautiful. I nodded, but something in me ached. 15 used to sound like a triumph. Lately, it sounded like a number carved in stone, proof of endurance more than happiness. Back home, I rearranged those flowers 3 times before finding the right vase. I made a note to buy candles. Maybe cook breakfast that morning. Cheese grits, turkey bacon, the way he likes. I told myself love doesn't survive on grand gestures. It lives in the small ones. I'd already booked the table at Oak and Ivy. Private booth, window view, live jazz. I even emailed the manager to request the same pianist from our 10th anniversary, the one who played At Last while Darren slid that sapphire necklace around my neck. That night, he told me I was the calm in his storm. These days, I felt more like the wallpaper in his office. Familiar, decorative, and easy to ignore. Still, I believed in honoring my vows, even if he forgot his. So I wrote a note in my planner that read, "If he remembers, I'll believe him. If he doesn't, I'll believe that too." The morning of our anniversary, I woke before dawn. Habit. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of the hallway clock. I brewed hazelnut coffee, his favorite, and set his travel mug by the door. Ironed his blue pinstripe shirt, the one he wears when he wants to look like the man people respect. When he came downstairs, he didn't look up, just murmured, "Thanks." Kissed the top of my head mechanically and left the smell of aftershave behind him. No mention of the date, no smile, just footsteps fading into the driveway. I stood at the kitchen counter, fingers still wrapped around the warm mug, and whispered, "Happy anniversary, Darren." The silence answered back. By noon, my coworkers were commenting under my Facebook post, a picture from our 10th anniversary, smiling faces, and wine glasses. Caption, 15 years, one amazing man, and a whole lot of grace. Grateful today. He hadn't even seen it. I didn't post it for him. I posted it for the illusion, for the people who still believed in the story I once lived inside. At 3:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Darren. "Babe, I'm so sorry. Huge work fire, gotta handle. Let's do Sat night instead. Love you." I stared at the text until the words blurred. That red heart looked sterile, like the sticker a nurse gives you after a painful shot. I didn't reply, didn't cry, didn't rage. I just felt a stillness I hadn't felt in years, the kind that comes when disappointment is no longer a surprise. Now here's the part that matters. 3 months earlier, the university hosted its annual donors gala. Darren said he couldn't make it. Budget crisis. I'd stopped arguing by then. That night, I wore a navy gown with a high slit and soft curls pinned to one side, the kind of dress that made people remember you, even if you barely spoke. That's when I met Mr. Caleb Caldwell, Darren's division vice president. He had the kind of authority that moved quietly through rooms, the kind that didn't need to raise its voice. When he accidentally spilled red wine on his tuxedo jacket, I grabbed club soda from the catering bar and laughed. Academic reflex, I said. We're always cleaning up someone else's mess. He smiled, slow, thoughtful. If you ever need anything, Dr. Barnes, anything at all, you call me. I'd kept that number in my phone like a folded card in a locked drawer. So at 3:22 p.m., exactly 5 minutes after Darren's excuse, I opened our old anniversary reservation email, clicked Add Guest, and texted Mr. Caldwell. Hi, Mr. Caldwell. Would you be free for dinner tonight? 7 p.m. at Oak and Ivy. My treat. His reply came 6 minutes later. Absolutely. Looking forward to it. No questions, no hesitation. A man who understood the language beneath the words. By 6:30 p.m., I was standing in front of the mirror, tightening the wrap of my emerald dress. The fabric shimmered like quiet money under the lamplight. I slipped on gold hoops. The ones Darren once said made me look too grown. Good. Outside, the air was soft and heavy. Early summer Carolina heat, the kind that settles on your skin like memory. Darren had already left, briefcase in hand. Meeting Westfield clients, he said, barely kissing my cheek. His cologne lingered, then faded like a rehearsed goodbye. The Uber driver, a woman with silver braids and gospel music playing low, glanced back as I slid into the seat. You smell like a woman with plans, she said. Something like that, I replied. She chuckled. He better be worth it. I smiled at the window, at my own reflection. Oh, I said quietly, he will be. Oak and Ivy sat glowing at the corner of Tryon Street, the kind of restaurant that tried to look effortless in its perfection. Candles flickered inside like tiny spotlights. Waiters glided between tables, carrying trays that smelled of butter and power. The hostess recognized me. Good evening, Dr. Barnes. Your booth is ready. When she led me toward the back, the sound of soft jazz wrapped the air. Then, halfway through the room, I saw him. Darren. He was leaning back in a booth I hadn't reserved, his jacket off, tie loosened. The woman across from him wore a wine-colored slip dress, elegant, careless, with the same shade of lipstick I once wore when he used to notice me. Her laugh floated across the room. He reached across the table, brushing his thumb over her hand. Her hand rested on his thigh. And just like that, every doubt I'd ever swallowed turned solid. He didn't see me, but someone else did. Mr. Caldwell, already standing near the bar, holding a bourbon. Our eyes met. For a moment, I thought he'd look away out of courtesy. Instead, he smiled. Slow, deliberate, like a man watching a truth he'd suspected unfold before him. He set his glass down, straightened his cufflinks, and walked toward me. Dr. Barnes, he said smoothly, offering his arm. Shall we? I nodded once, took his arm, felt the quiet strength in his stillness, the kind that doesn't need noise to make a point. Together, we walked across the floor. Every step was a drumbeat, every clink of glass a reminder of all the nights I'd eaten alone, waiting for a man who never came home on time. When Darren finally looked up, the world froze. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened, then closed. The woman turned, following his gaze, her smile faltering as recognition sparked behind her eyes. And I just smiled. Not out of rage, not out of triumph, but because I finally understood what silence could do. Darren's face drained of color, not from guilt, from exposure. There's a difference. That's the thing about men like him. They don't crumble because they've done wrong. They crumble because somebody finally sees it. He pulled his hand away from the woman so fast the wine glass tipped. It didn't spill, but the liquid quivered. A dark, red tremor against crystal. A heartbeat made visible. Mr. Caldwell's voice cut through the soft hum of jazz. Calm, even, dangerous. Didn't expect to see you here, Darren. You working tonight? He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. The room quieted around him like the world was waiting for an earthquake to finish its thought. The woman, early 30s maybe, froze. Loose curls framed her face, and a gold bracelet dangled nervously at her wrist. Her lipstick matched her dress, and for a second I saw her reflection in the glass of the wine bottle. She looked frightened. Not of me, of the truth. I didn't say a word, just walked forward, slow and steady, and slid into the booth beside Mr. Caldwell. My emerald dress brushed against the leather seat, the scent of vanilla and bourbon mixed in the air. The waitress appeared, timid smile, pad in hand. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" I smiled softly. "Sparkling water with lemon, please?" My voice didn't waver. My hands didn't shake. Because I wasn't there to fight. I was there to watch him unravel. Darren stammered something about a client dinner, about how I must have misunderstood, about how he thought I had other plans. He was sweating, the kind of sweat that has nothing to do with temperature, just fear wearing perfume. I didn't respond. I let the silence stretch, let him hear it echo. Mr. Caldwell leaned back, one arm over the booth, the other holding his drink. He looked Darren dead in the eye. "Monique invited me tonight," he said evenly, "told me it was a special evening. Anniversary, I believe." Then, with a small smile toward me, he added, 15 years. That's no small feat. Congratulations." His tone was gentle, like a man delivering roses at a funeral. I nodded. "Thank you," I said quietly. "It's been enlightening." The woman across the table shifted, clearly uncomfortable. She opened her mouth, probably to offer some apology she didn't owe, but Darren gripped her wrist beneath the table. I saw the movement, sharp, controlling, a whisper of command under the cloth napkin. She stayed. She shouldn't have. Let me back up. You need the full picture. I met Darren Barnes when I was 25, freshly tenured, newly confident, and too optimistic for my own good. He came to a campus fundraiser, said he was there to support Black excellence, but he mostly just watched me. He told me I had professor eyes, said I looked at people like I could see the truth they were trying to hide. Then he said I had a preacher's voice. That line made me laugh back then. I didn't know flattery could be a cage. For 6 Thursdays straight, he took me to dinner. Small southern restaurants with live music and fried catfish. He was the kind of man who opened doors and quoted scripture at dessert. I let him kiss me after the 6th dinner. He proposed a year later, on the 4th of July, fireworks bursting overhead. Said he wanted fireworks every year. I didn't realize then that fire burns both ways. Celebration and destruction come from the same spark. Our first few years were good. Honest good. Grocery runs, shared laughter, sticky notes on mirrors that said, "You're my piece." But something shifted. The more I achieved, the smaller he became. When my first research paper got published, he barely smiled. When I won my first teaching award, he said, "That's nice, babe," and changed the channel. At first, I thought it was me, that maybe I'd outgrown softness. I tried harder, cooked more, complimented him more. But the truth came quietly. Darren liked women who looked up at him, not across. And I stood tall. The first crack showed on our 10th anniversary. He forgot, said it slipped his mind, blamed it on too many loan accounts. I didn't yell. I cooked dinner anyway. Steak tips, candlelight, his favorite playlist, Luther and Anita. He ate in silence, fork scraping the plate. Didn't even look up until the evening news came on. Something inside me broke that night. Not like glass, but like wood. Splintered quietly, still standing, but never the same. 2 years ago, I found a phone charger that wasn't ours, in the guest room drawer, a cheap off-brand thing. Then, a month later, a lipstick, deep plum, not my color. Found it rolling around his car console. He said it was a client's, said she'd left it behind during a loan consultation. I wanted to believe him, because belief is softer than loneliness. Starting over at 45 sounded heavier than forgiving a liar. So I stayed, pretended not to notice how he started dressing better on Tuesdays, pretended not to notice that he always came home smelling faintly of someone else's perfume, one too floral for the office. Then last month, a receipt, oak and ivy, 2 entrees, 1 dessert, a bottle of Pinot, Tuesday night. He'd told me he was in Raleigh for work. That receipt sat in my purse for a week. A tiny, folded truth burning a hole through my peace. I didn't confront him. I documented it, photographed it, filed it. That's the thing about being married to a psychologist. I understand patterns, and Darren's pattern was predictable. Gaslight, distract, deny. So I built my own pattern: observe, confirm, execute. Back at the restaurant, the young woman finally spoke. Her voice trembled just enough to make the words believable. I didn't know he was married. I studied her face. The confusion, the small hurt hiding under embarrassment. I believed her, not because of her tone, but because Darren didn't correct her. He didn't even glance at me. Instead, he sighed and said, "Let's talk about this at home, Monique." Home. The word tasted like smoke. Mr. Caldwell tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing just enough to draw blood. "Home?" he repeated. "You mean the one listed under her name on the mortgage?" Darren blinked. So did she. I almost smiled. I leaned in, soft voice, deliberate tone. "You should probably head out, sweetheart. I think your table's got termites." Her face went pale. She gathered her purse, her dignity, and slipped out fast. No words, no eye contact. Just the sound of her heels tapping away like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence. Darren turned to me, disbelief curdling into anger. That's what narcissists do. They turn mirrors into knives. The moment you reflect who they really are, they start to bleed and blame you for it. He whispered, low and venomous, "You planned this." I met his gaze, calm, steady. I prepared for it. He leaned forward. "You made me look like a fool." I tilted my head. I didn't have to. Silence stretched, the kind that feels like judgment. Then I reached into my purse, pulled out the manila folder I'd been carrying for weeks. I slid it across the table. The paper made a quiet sound, like justice breathing. Inside, screenshots of restaurant receipts, cash withdrawal records from our joint account, a copy of the hotel invoice from that conference he never attended. I'd highlighted dates in pink, not for flair, for clarity. Mr. Caldwell glanced down, flipped through each page, then closed it gently. "I think that's enough for one night," he said. Then he stood. I followed. The sound of my heels on marble matched my pulse. Steady, calm, final. Darren stayed seated, knuckles white around his wine glass, eyes wet with rage he didn't know where to place. Mr. Caldwell placed a hand lightly on my back, guiding me toward the exit. As we passed the hostess stand, she looked up, sensing tension. "Everything all right, Dr. Barnes?" I smiled. "Better than ever." We walked out into the warm night air. The sky over Charlotte glowed faintly orange, the city humming its quiet song of traffic and neon. I breathed deep, the scent of jasmine and asphalt filling my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift, not gone, but moving. I wasn't free yet, but I was awake. Because power isn't loud. Power doesn't shout. Power doesn't throw plates or make scenes. Power walks out, steady, composed, and untouched, while the guilty drown in their own silence. We didn't speak in the car, not a word. Mr. Caldwell simply nodded at the driver, a silent command, and opened the door for me with the kind of grace you can't fake. The ride was quiet, not awkward, not cold, purposeful, sacred, like something had been buried back at that restaurant, something heavy, and silence was the only language solemn enough to mourn it. I stared out the window as the lights of Charlotte blurred by. Raindrops gathered on the glass, then raced each other down. I thought of how easily everything slips, how one storm can wash away a foundation you thought was unshakable. Mr. Caldwell didn't fill the space with small talk. He didn't ask if I was all right. He just sat there, hands folded, presence steady. When the car pulled up to my driveway, he turned slightly and said, "Take care, Dr. Barnes." I nodded. "Thank you. For everything." He gave a small smile, one that said, "I understand more than I'll ever say." And that was that. The car drove off. I stood there a long while, watching the taillights fade. The air smelled like wet asphalt and endings. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of fists on wood, not knocking, banging, the kind that vibrates through the frame and shakes the morning stillness out of your bones. Darren. He must have forgotten I'd changed the passcode 3 weeks ago. Must have forgotten the locks were replaced. Must have forgotten I'd filed the paperwork for temporary separation the same afternoon I booked that dinner reservation. I walked to the window upstairs and looked down. There he was, phone in one hand, overnight bag in the other, hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled, jaw tight, the picture of regret, or maybe just exposure. He shouted my name once, then again, louder this time. I didn't flinch, didn't move. I just stood there, hidden behind the curtain, and whispered to myself, "You did this to yourself." The words felt calm, final, like a benediction. Eventually, he stopped. He stood on the porch for another minute, pacing, staring at the door like it might apologize. Then he walked away. The silence that followed was pure peace. That day, I taught my morning classes like nothing had happened. Intro to Cognitive Psychology. The irony wasn't lost on me. My students filed in, half asleep, half scrolling their phones. I wrote behavioral patterns on the board in white chalk and smiled at the universe's sense of humor. When class ended, one of my seniors, bright girl named Aaliyah, lingered behind. "Dr. Barnes," she said softly, "your lectures feel different lately. Like calmer, but stronger. Like you've already been through the storm." I smiled. "You don't know the half of it, baby girl," I thought. But out loud I said, "Keep living, and always protect your peace." She nodded like she'd just been handed a secret. Maybe she had. By the following Monday, the email arrived. Subject line, HR inquiry, Darren Barnes. It came from Mr. Caldwell's office, formal, sterile, efficient. "We appreciate the information you provided. We'll take it from here." That was all it said. No warmth, no elaboration. Just closure disguised as protocol. The folder I'd handed over at Oak and Ivy. It did its work. Quietly. No shouting. No scandal. Just the slow, steady unraveling of a man who built his house on borrowed ground. And I didn't need to post anything online. Didn't need to warn the world about men like him. Didn't even need to say, "I told you so." All I had to do was wait. Because when men like Darren build castles on lies, all it takes is one quiet wind. And everything comes tumbling down. The fallout started softly. First came the leave of absence, corporate code for we're checking how deep the rot goes. Then came the audit. Then the internal review. Then the silence. The long, bureaucratic silence that only ever means one thing. By the end of the month, Darren was no longer Vice President of Regional Lending, just Mr. Barnes, unemployed, unmarried, unmoved. He called 3 times, once late at night, once early morning, once on a Sunday like that might make me merciful. Didn't answer any of them, not out of anger, just emptiness. There was nothing left to give him, not forgiveness, not fury, not even my voice. So I let the phone ring. And in that ringing, I heard freedom. Instead, I poured myself into my work. Started a new mentorship circle for young Black women on campus. We met on Wednesdays after class in the quietest corner of the faculty lounge. A round wooden table under a skylight. We called it the quiet table, a nod to the place where the real conversations happen, the unrecorded ones, the ones that save you when nothing else will. I told them what I wish someone had told me at 25. Never let a man define your peace. Never let a paycheck silence your instincts. And never ever beg someone to see your worth. They wrote the words down like gospel. Some cried, some laughed in relief, and I felt something shift inside me, like all the pain had been repurposed into power. A few days later, Mr. Caldwell called. His voice was smooth as ever, but lighter this time. "Dr. Barnes," he said, "I wanted to ask if you'd consider consulting for the bank's new leadership equity initiative. We need people who can spot character, not just credentials." I paused, looked out my office window at the courtyard below, students crossing in the sunlight, laughing free. "Thank you," I said. "That's generous. I'll think about it." He chuckled softly. "Smart woman. Take your time. That's the first sign of a good leader." I smiled. "And the second?" "Knowing when to let the wrong people drown." He said it like a joke, but it wasn't. Weeks passed. Peace became my new routine. Then, one Thursday morning, a knock on the door. The mail carrier handed me a thick certified envelope. Return address: Barnes and Keating, attorneys at law. I already knew. Inside, Darren was contesting the house. Claimed he'd invested years of equity, wanted a buyout. I laughed, not bitterly, just tired. I forwarded it to my attorney with one note. He can have the garage tools, nothing else. The house? My mother left me that house. Deed signed, notarized, and filed back in 2009, before I ever took his last name. He could huff and puff all he wanted, but that house was mine. Brick by brick, memory by memory. And the bank account he used to sneak around with, the one he drained to take his little Miami vacation last summer, closed. Funds relocated. New account. My name only. He was trying to play chess, but I'd already finished the game. See, people think revenge is fire. But no, revenge is still water. It drowns quietly. It's not shouting in a restaurant. It's not keying a car or bleaching suits. It's sitting in your own home sipping tea while a man drowns in consequences he built with his own hands. That's the art of silence. One evening over dinner, my friend Yolanda asked me, "Girl, why didn't you go public? You could have humiliated him, dragged him all over Facebook like he did you." I smiled, stirred my tea. "Because embarrassment is temporary," I said. "But being erased from a table you thought you owned? That's permanent." She laughed, shaking her head. "You dangerous." "Not dangerous," I said. "Just done." And Darren, still texting, still calling, still pretending this was just a rough patch. He sends long messages, half apologies, half manipulation. "You know I still love you. You know it didn't mean anything. We can fix this if you'd just talk to me." I read them sometimes, not out of hope, but as reminders. Because every now and then, you need to see the ghosts, to remember why you stopped answering the door. The truth is, he was never my partner, just a man who liked the reflection of himself in my shine. He thought I was the mirror, but I was the light. And now that I've dimmed the room, he's just another shadow, a silhouette of what I used to tolerate, a sound I no longer recognize. He's still out there somewhere, pacing on porches, knocking on locked doors, but not mine. Not anymore. It's funny what people think silence means. Some assume it's weakness, others mistake it for forgiveness. But my silence? It was strategy. The kind that doesn't come from anger. The kind that comes from knowing exactly where every piece on the board already sits. After Darren was let go quietly, the office grapevine got loud. You'd be amazed how fast whispers travel through a building made of glass. By Tuesday, half the staff at the regional bank knew he was gone. By Friday, everyone had a version of why. Some said it was internal restructuring. Others said it had something to do with mismanaged accounts. A few leaned in closer, lowered their voices, and whispered, "It's his wife, you know. She found out." People love to narrate your pain when they think you're too quiet to stop them. Then the messages started. A few of Darren's colleagues, Women I'd seen at galas, fundraisers, and those polished bank Christmas parties reached out. One texted, "I always knew something was off with him. You okay?" Another called and said, "You should go after him legally, Monique. Get everything." I thanked them both, then told them the truth. "No," I said, "I don't need the courtroom." Because the courtroom was already inside the paperwork, and the paperwork had already spoken. See, back in 2016, I had a scare. A simple dizzy spell that turned into a hospital stay, high blood pressure, exhaustion. The doctor called it stress-related fatigue. But lying there, with an IV in my arm and a blood pressure cuff squeezing rhythm into my fear, I had a thought. What happens if I don't wake up? Darren was late visiting that day, said he got caught in traffic. I remember staring at the ceiling tiles and realizing I didn't want that man deciding anything about my life, not even what song played at my funeral. So I called my attorney the next week, revised every document I had, will, trust, healthcare proxy, house deed, even the insurance beneficiaries. The notary, a woman with kind eyes and tired hands, paused while stamping the last page. "You sure you don't want your husband listed on anything medical?" she asked gently, and I said, "Only God knows how I'm leaving this earth, but if I stay here, I'm staying smart." That decision, made in a fluorescent-lit hallway with nurses rushing past and machines beeping, turned out to be the most powerful move of my life. Because when the dust finally cleared from Darren's downfall, there wasn't a single thing he could touch. Not the house, not the pension, not the retirement fund, not the savings account I'd already dissolved and restructured under a single-member LLC 6 months before he even started cheating. Every asset had already been shifted, quietly, legally, precisely. They say a woman who plans for peace is wise, but a woman who plans for war, without raising her voice, is unstoppable. And yet, even with all that done, I still had one more card left to play. Not out of pettiness, but out of legacy. Because power isn't about destroying, it's about directing. Mr. Caldwell called me one Thursday afternoon. His voice was smooth as ever, but it carried weight, the kind that means an invitation isn't really a request. "Dr. Barnes, would you join me for lunch tomorrow? Quiet boardroom on the top floor. I'd like to discuss something strategic." I knew what that meant. So the next day, I dressed for clarity, not charm. Slate gray suit, structured blazer, gold pin shaped like an open book. No perfume, only unscented lotion and steady breath. When I walked through the revolving doors of the main office, I thought about all the times I'd visited that building as Mrs. Barnes, the polite smiles, the wives' luncheons, the "you must be so proud of Darren" conversations. Now I was walking in on my own name. They led me to a small boardroom with glass walls overlooking the skyline, a view Darren once bragged about having from his office. Mr. Caldwell stood to greet me. "Dr. Barnes," he said with that measured respect that never feels performative. I sat across from him. No handshake needed. The air already carried enough understanding. They offered me a consulting role. 6-month contract, equity leadership, restructuring, high 6 figures. I only asked one question. "Will this position give me oversight of the Community Reinvestment Fund?" He smiled. "Yes, it will. You'd chair the committee directly." I nodded once. That was all I needed to hear. I signed the papers that afternoon. Now, here's the full circle moment. 3 months into the role, we hosted a roundtable discussion for local entrepreneurs. The topic: small business, support for Black-owned ventures in Charlotte. I chaired the panel, white tablecloths, polished microphones, a banner that read, "Building Back Better Communities." I wore a coral blouse that day, a soft color that made people underestimate me. The applications for funding were spread across the table. One name caught my eye: Darren's cousin, Marcus Barnes, a restaurateur. I skimmed the details, promising proposal, decent numbers. But one line stopped me cold. Unofficial advisor, Darren Barnes. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch, not in anger but in recognition of the universe's sense of humor. I didn't deny the application. I simply flagged it for compliance review. Flagged it for possible ethical concerns regarding financial misconduct tied to a previous bank officer. No name, no note, no performance. Just paper. And paper? Paper has a long memory. That's the thing about revenge. It doesn't scream. It doesn't throw hands. It wears a suit, files everything by deadline, and smiles at the front desk. Meanwhile, Darren tried his old tricks. He reached out through mutual friends, pretended they just happened to mention his name, said he wanted to talk like adults. Then came the flowers, lilies, white, dramatic, expensive. The only problem? I'm allergic to lilies. He knew that. There was a note attached. Still your man, just messed up. I didn't respond, didn't even touch the petals. But I did call building security, told them to log the delivery, sender included, in the visitor record, just in case the next bouquet came with thorns. That night, the air was heavy with late summer humidity, the kind of night where the sky glows purple before rain. I sat on my front porch with a glass of sweet tea, the ice melting slow. The cicadas hummed from the trees like a living choir, steady and low. Peace had a sound, and that was it. On the table beside me sat my grandmother's Bible. Soft leather, corners worn smooth. She left it to me when she passed, pages marked with tiny notes written in looping cursive. I flipped it open, and a pressed flower fell out. Delicate, brittle, still carrying the faintest scent of jasmine. Tucked between Psalms and Proverbs was a folded piece of paper I hadn't noticed in years. Her handwriting read, "A woman don't have to scream to be heard by heaven. Just walk right. God'll do the rest." I stared at those words for a long time, the porch light flickering above me. Grandma Monroe never raised her voice, but everyone listened when she moved. And me? I was moving in silence. But make no mistake. The earth was shifting. The last time I saw Darren in person, he didn't knock. He just appeared, like a ghost that forgot it was no longer welcome among the living. It was a Sunday morning, the kind that feels slow and forgiving, the kind where the sun filters through the blinds like a promise that you made it through another week. I was in the front yard, clipping the hydrangeas that lined the walkway, big, soft clusters of blue and white, heavy with dew, the same ones my mother planted when this house was just a modest starter home. She used to hum while she worked in this very spot, saying, "Flowers don't bloom loud, baby. They just bloom." And I guess I learned something from that. When I saw Darren's car pull up, the same black sedan he once polished every Saturday like it was a trophy, I didn't feel a thing. No rush of anger, no pang of longing, just stillness. He stepped out wearing a suit too wrinkled for church and eyes too red for forgiveness. His tie hung loose, like he'd tried and failed to make himself look presentable. He walked up the path slow, careful, like a man approaching a courtroom he wasn't ready for. "Monique," he said, voice low and uncertain, "can we talk?" I didn't move, just kept clipping, one stem at a time. The shears made a soft, satisfying sound, a snip, snip, clean cuts, the kind that don't leave room for regrowth. He shifted on his feet, clearing his throat. "I know I messed up. I lost everything." I looked up at him finally, my gloves still on, my heart still steady. "No," I said. "You didn't lose everything. You gave everything away. You just didn't think I'd notice." He blinked, rubbed the back of his neck. That old nervous tic. I used to think it was endearing. Now I saw it for what it was, the body trying to hide what the soul already confessed. "I didn't come to fight," he said softly. I just miss my wife." For a second, the air went still. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting for my answer. I set the shears down and looked him square in the eye. "You don't miss your wife, Darren. You miss your reflection in my loyalty." He froze. I could see the words land, sharp, precise, true. He stood there, waiting for me to waver, waiting for the tears, the soft voice, the woman who used to patch up his ego with prayer and patience. But she doesn't live here anymore, because you can't break a woman who rebuilt herself in silence. I heard about the bank, he said finally, looking down at the grass. I nodded once. I'm sure you did. Then I added, just to watch the truth settle between us, Mr. Caldwell sends his regards. His jaw tightened, that muscle ticking in his cheek like a clock winding down. I smiled softly, not out of spite, but peace. Funny how things work out, I said. The same hands you used to undo us. I used to build myself. He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in years, I saw him without the charm, without the titles, without the practiced confidence. Just a man, small, human, exhausted by his own choices. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small white envelope. I wanted to give you this, he murmured. It's not much, but... I raised my hand. No, Darren. The only thing you can give me is distance. He froze mid-motion, the envelope trembling slightly in his fingers. His eyes softened, then dimmed. You really won't even talk to me? I took a slow breath, the kind that clears a decade out of your chest. Darren, I said quietly, I have talked to you. For years. You just never listened. He swallowed hard, looking at the ground like it could save him. I could see it in his face. The realization that this wasn't a scene he could charm his way out of. This wasn't the kind of fight that ended with flowers or empty promises. This was Judgment Day, and the jury was silence. He turned to leave, shoulders slumped, steps heavy. But halfway down the path, he stopped and looked back. I never meant to hurt you, he said. I nodded. Intent doesn't undo impact. He looked like he wanted to say more, but there was nothing left to say. So he walked to his car, got in, and drove off. The sound of the engine faded down the street, softer, smaller, until all I could hear was the hum of cicadas and the click of my shears closing one last time. I wasn't proud of the look on his face, but I wasn't responsible for it either. That's the myth they sell us, isn't it? That women exist to catch their pain, to soothe them, to make excuses for their cruelty because he's just going through something. But I'm not a rehab center. I'm not a sanctuary for broken men who refuse to heal. I'm not a warm-up lap before they run full speed towards someone else. I am the finish line, and I crossed it already. That evening, I boxed up the last photo album that had him in it. Not out of rage, not out of grief, out of completion. The pictures didn't hurt anymore. They just didn't fit my life. I slid the lid closed gently, like sealing a time capsule that would never need to be opened again. Because when a chapter closes, you don't reread the pages hoping they'll change. You thank them for the lesson, and you turn the page. The next month, I was invited to speak at the opening of a new women's center in East Charlotte. The room was packed. Church ladies, young professionals, single mothers, survivors. The walls were lined with photos of Black women, entrepreneurs, and community leaders. When I finished my keynote, a young girl approached me. Couldn't have been more than 17. She had a notebook clutched to her chest and nervous eyes that reminded me of my own students. Ms. Barnes, she said, voice small but steady. How did you get so strong? I smiled at her. A real one, the kind that starts deep in your chest and rises slow. By staying quiet long enough to hear myself think, I said, by trusting what I already knew, and by learning that peace is louder than payback. She wrote it down word for word like it was scripture. Maybe one day it will be. Now, every Sunday morning, I sit on the same porch where I once watched Darren walk away. The air smells like fresh-cut grass and redemption. Coffee in one hand, gospel playing low from the radio, a pot of gumbo simmering inside. My mother's recipe, the one that always tastes better the next day. Sometimes the wind carries laughter from the neighbor's yard. Sometimes I hear the mail truck, the faint hum of the city waking up, and every now and then my phone buzzes with a text from a number I blocked long ago. I don't open them, because if it costs my peace, it's too expensive, even if it's free. I didn't ruin Darren's life. I just stopped protecting the version of it he sold people. And when the cover story collapsed, what was left wasn't mine to fix, because truth doesn't destroy, it reveals. And once it did, once every mask fell and every lie turned to dust, all that remained was him and me. But here's the difference. He's surviving his consequences, and I'm living my rebirth. I'm still here, wiser, softer, not weaker, stronger, not harder. There's a peace in surviving betrayal, not the kind that shouts victory, but the kind that whispers freedom. And I finally understand what Grandma Monroe meant when she said, "A good woman don't need to clap back. Her life will testify for her." Mine has. I don't speak his name anymore, not out of bitterness, out of release. But sometimes, when I drive through Uptown and pass Oak and Ivy, I catch my reflection in the window. It's different now, still me, but freer. The maitre d' still holds the door open whenever he sees me. "Welcome back, Dr. Barnes," he says, smiling. And then he always adds, "Your usual table?" I smile back. "Yes," I say, "always." Because that's the thing about healing. Once you reclaim your peace, you never forget where you left it. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.